I tried building passive income for 30 days, and on day one, I already realized I'd been lied to. Not by one person, not by one guru, by the whole vibe of the internet. Because online, passive income looks like this: set up one thing on your laptop, go to sleep, wake up to sales, screenshots, notifications, and some guy with suspiciously white teeth telling you freedom is only 3 clicks away. Yeah, that was not my experience. My experience looked more like this: confusion, bad ideas, second guessing, tiny wins, zero glamour, and a whole lot of staring at my screen thinking, wait, is this actually how people do it? And that is exactly why this video exists. Because if you clicked on this, you probably do not want another fantasy. You do not want another fake story where somebody accidentally made money in their sleep after working for 2 hours on a Saturday. You want the truth. What can an ordinary person actually do in 30 days if they want to start building passive income? Not become rich. Start. That is the key. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what I learned trying to build passive income in 30 days, what actually works, what is a waste of time, what to do first, what to ignore, and the step-by-step plan I wish I had on day one. And I need to say this right now, early, so nobody misunderstands the whole point. Passive income is not no-work income. It is delayed payoff income. You work now, you build now. You maybe earn little or nothing at first. And then if you build the right thing the right way, it starts paying you later, sometimes while you sleep, sometimes while you are at work, sometimes while you are doing absolutely nothing. That is the real game. And honestly, that is still powerful. Because most people spend their whole lives doing income that only exists while they are actively working. Clock in, get paid, stop working, money stops too. Passive income is different. It is your attempt to separate time from money, even just a little. That was my goal. Not to become a millionaire in 1 month, not to quit my life and move to Bali. Just to prove, in a real-world way, that I could start building something that had a chance of paying me without me constantly trading hours for it. So I gave myself 30 days, and the first thing I learned was brutal. Most people fail before they even begin because they start with the wrong question. They ask, what passive income stream should I choose? That sounds smart, but it is actually backwards. The better question is, what kind of passive income fits my current reality? Because there is no universal best model. There is only the best model for your skills, your time, your money, your personality, and your willingness to keep going when nobody cares yet. That is the part people skip. So before I built anything, I had to get clear on what passive income actually is. There are really only a few major ways most normal people build it. 1. Cash-producing investments. Things like dividend stocks, bonds, REITs, high-yield cash, rental property if you have money and tolerance for headaches. 2. Digital assets. Things like ebooks, templates, courses, printables, software, photo packs, paid newsletters. 3. Content-based assets. YouTube videos, blog posts, affiliate pages, media libraries, niche accounts, searchable content that can keep bringing in attention later. 4. Systems and automations. Businesses or offers that require work up front but eventually need less of your time because the system keeps doing part of the job. And the truth hit me pretty fast. If you have serious capital already, passive income can start with money. If you do not, it usually starts with building. That alone filters out a lot of nonsense. Because a lot of people say they want passive income, but what they really want is immediate extra cash with no uncertainty. That is different. That is side hustle money. Totally valid, by the way. But different. Passive income usually begins with one of two sacrifices. You either sacrifice capital now or you sacrifice effort now. I did not want to pretend I was starting with a giant portfolio. So I approached this like a regular person trying to build something from scratch. And that led me to the first real decision. I had to stop chasing 10 ideas and pick one lane. That sounds boring, but this is where almost everybody messes up. They try drop shipping on Monday, dividend investing on Tuesday, digital products on Wednesday, YouTube on Thursday, and by Friday they conclude that passive income is fake. No, they just never stayed with one thing long enough to let it breathe. So I made one rule. For 30 days, I would focus on building one simple passive income foundation instead of juggling a bunch of shiny distractions. And after thinking it through, I picked the path that makes the most sense for most beginners who do not have a huge pile of cash. Create a simple digital asset that solves one small problem and use content to feed attention into it. That is it. Simple in theory, messy in practice, but practical. Because if you are starting from zero, you need a model that has three things: low startup cost, high upside, and the ability to compound. A digital product with content behind it checks all three boxes. You can make it cheaply, you can improve it over time, and one piece of content can keep bringing people to it long after you publish it. That is real leverage. Now, before I explain the exact step-by-step plan, let me show you the three big mistakes people make, because honestly, these are the things that waste the first month. And I know because I nearly made every single one. The first mistake is trying to create passive income from a market you do not understand. A lot of people pick ideas based on what sounds profitable, not what they can actually explain, improve, or speak about like a normal human being. That is a terrible starting point. If you cannot talk clearly about a problem, you probably cannot build something useful around it. The second mistake is building before validating. This one is deadly. People spend 3 weeks making some massive product nobody asked for, then panic when nobody buys it. But passive income is not about creating more stuff. It is about creating useful stuff people already want. The third mistake is expecting the first version to be impressive. This one almost got me. I kept wanting my first attempt to look polished, complete, expert level. But that is ego talking. In the beginning, your job is not to impress strangers. Your job is to publish something real and learn. That shift changed everything. So let me tell you what day one actually looked like. I sat down and made a brutally honest inventory. What do I know? What do people already ask me about? What do I actually enjoy enough to stay with for more than 6 minutes? What kind of thing could I create without needing a team, a fancy budget, or a PhD? That is the exercise most people skip because it is not exciting, but it matters a lot. Because passive income built on your actual strengths has a chance. Passive income built on random trend chasing usually dies on contact with reality. For me, the best lane was obvious once I stopped overcomplicating it. Finance, simplicity, money psychology, practical systems. The stuff people are already curious about but usually hear explained in a boring or confusing way. That meant I did not need to invent demand from scratch. I just needed to package clear value in a way people could immediately understand. That is a huge difference. And this brings me to the first example that shaped the whole challenge. Example number 1, the person who wants passive income but keeps consuming instead of building. You know this person. Maybe you are this person sometimes. I definitely was. They watch videos about passive income every night. They save posts. They compare strategies. They research for hours. They say they are learning. But nothing is actually being built. No product, no content, no email list, no assets, no audience, no system, just more input. That is not building passive income. That is procrastination dressed up as productivity. I had to call myself out on that immediately, because there is a point where research becomes fear-wearing glasses. You are not learning anymore. You are hiding. So I made a decision that honestly felt uncomfortable. By the end of week one, I had to publish something, even if it was small, even if it was imperfect, even if it made me cringe a little. That decision saved the whole experiment. Because passive income does not start when you understand everything. It starts when an asset exists. No asset, no leverage, no leverage, no passive income. So if you want the real first step, here it is. Step 1, choose one narrow lane where you can solve one small, useful problem, not 10 problems. 1, not help people with money. That is too broad. More like help beginners make a simple budget, help creators organize their content ideas, help freelancers send cleaner invoices, help students meal prep cheaply, help people compare ETFs, help remote workers plan their week. Small, specific, useful. That is where beginner passive income starts. Because broad ideas are sexy, but specific solutions sell. And once I understood that, the whole challenge became way less mysterious. I did not need some genius master plan. I needed a simple offer in a clear niche connected to a real problem. That was the moment it stopped feeling like fantasy and started feeling like work. Useful work, but still work. And weirdly, that is when I got excited. Because once the dream dies, the plan can finally begin. By the end of the first few days, I had my lane. Now I needed a product. And this is where people usually overdo it. They hear digital product and immediately imagine a giant course, a 50-page ebook, a membership, a slick website, a whole brand, a color palette, maybe a cinematic trailer for some reason. Calm down. Your first passive income asset should be embarrassingly simple. I am serious. The simpler it is, the faster you can finish it, test it, improve it, and learn from it. That is how beginners win. So instead of asking, what is the biggest thing I can build? I asked, what is the smallest useful thing somebody might actually pay for? That question is gold, because it forces you out of fantasy and into practicality. A beginner does not need a digital empire. A beginner needs a first working asset. So I mapped out a few options, a budget template, a simple spending tracker, a money reset checklist, a beginner passive income roadmap, a mini guide explaining how to set up a boring, repeatable wealth system. Not complicated, just useful. And here's the big realization. People do not pay for complexity. They pay for clarity. That is huge. A lot of creators keep adding more, thinking more pages, more features, more modules, more stuff equals more value. Sometimes the opposite is true. A simple tool that saves someone 30 minutes, removes confusion, or gives them confidence can easily beat a giant bloated product nobody finishes. So I chose to build a compact, beginner-friendly resource around one clear promise: help someone go from "I want passive income" to "I have a realistic first plan." That became the backbone. But before I built it, I needed proof that this was not just interesting to me. I needed to know other people actually cared. And this is where example number 2 matters. Example number 2, the person who spends weeks building a beautiful product that nobody asked for. This happens constantly. People create in private, launch in silence, and then feel crushed when they hear crickets. Not because they are untalented, because they skipped validation. Validation sounds technical, but it is actually simple. You are looking for evidence that the problem is real, not proof that millions of people are ready to buy from you tomorrow, just proof that the pain exists. Are people searching for it, talking about it, complaining about it, trying to solve it already, clicking on content about it, saving posts about it, commenting questions under related videos? That is signal. So that is what I looked for. I studied comments. I looked at recurring beginner questions. I paid attention to where people got stuck. And the same theme kept showing up again and again. People do not just want passive income. They want a simple first path that feels possible from their current life. That distinction matters more than it sounds because people are exhausted by vague motivation. They do not want to be told create multiple income streams if they still do not know what to do on Tuesday night after work. They want specifics. What should I build first? How do I pick an idea? How long should it take? How do I know if it is stupid? What if nobody buys? What if I have no audience? What if I am not an expert? That is the real market. Confused beginners do not need inspiration nearly as much as they need simplification. So step 2 in the process became obvious. Step 2, validate the problem before you build the solution. Read comments, search questions, study what beginners ask repeatedly, look for pain that keeps repeating in plain language. The best product ideas usually sound boring when you first hear them because they are based on real friction, not fantasy. And once I had that, I built version 1, not perfect, not fancy, version 1. That is another thing people need to hear more often. Your first asset should be a draft that works, not a masterpiece. So I created something straightforward. A clean, practical resource. Short, actionable, skimmable, no fluff, no fake guru energy. Just a step-by-step starter path that reduces confusion. Then came the next challenge. How do people find it? Because even the best passive income asset still needs one ugly little thing called traffic. And this is where a lot of passive income advice quietly falls apart. They act like the product is the hard part. Sometimes the harder part is distribution. You can make something useful, but if nobody sees it, nothing happens. That is why my 30-day experiment was never just about building a product. It was about building a path to the product, which meant content. Now let me be clear, content is not instant passive income either. At first, it feels very active. You write, record, edit, post, think, revise, repeat. But content has one trait that makes it incredibly powerful for long-term leverage. It can keep working after you are done. A useful video can get views later. A searchable post can get found later. A good email can lead to sales later. A helpful thread can get shared later. Content is one of the few beginner-friendly tools that can turn effort today into attention tomorrow. That is why I believe this is one of the best passive income entry points for normal people. Not because it is easy, because it compounds. So I made a simple traffic plan. Instead of trying to be everywhere, I would create content around the exact beginner questions my product solved. No random posting, no vague motivational nonsense, no rise and grind filler, just useful content tied to actual demand. That is step 3. Step 3, create content that answers the exact questions your future buyer is already asking. If your product helps people choose a passive income idea, create content around choosing passive income ideas. If your product helps people budget, create content around budgeting mistakes. If your product helps people get their first freelance client, create content around beginner client problems. The content should not feel disconnected from the thing you sell. It should feel like the front door, and this is where the challenge got more interesting because now I could actually see the pieces connect. Problem, simple product, related content, potential traffic, possible sales path, not magic, a system, a very small system, sure, but still a system. And that is the moment passive income starts becoming real. When you stop thinking in isolated tactics and start thinking in loops, create useful thing, publish useful content, bring people into the ecosystem, improve based on feedback, repeat. That is the boring loop behind a lot of real online income. Now let me give you example number 3 because this one is sneaky. Example number 3, the person who gives up too early because the first numbers are small. This is probably the biggest emotional trap in the whole game. Your first views are small, your first clicks are small, your first sales are small. Sometimes there are no sales at all. And because the numbers look tiny, you assume the model is broken. But tiny is not broken. Tiny is early. That distinction matters so much because the first stage of passive income building does not look impressive from the outside. It looks slow, awkward, and kind of underwhelming. But that is how almost every compounding system begins. One useful post is not impressive. 10 useful posts start forming a pattern. 30 useful posts become a library. One tiny digital product is not impressive. 3 better versions of it start becoming an asset. 5 customer questions turn into 5 new content ideas. A handful of viewers turn into a small audience. A small audience turns into trust. Trust turns into sales. That is the machine. Slow at first, then less slow, then suddenly people call it luck. So I had to protect myself from that early discouragement. I stopped asking, did this blow up? And started asking, did this make the system stronger? That one question helped a lot because some work will not produce immediate money, but it still improves your asset. It sharpens your message. It teaches you the market. It reveals objections. It shows what people ignore and what they respond to. That is not wasted effort. That is the tuition, which leads to another important step. Step 4. Measure proof of progress the right way. In the beginning, do not obsess over huge income. Look for these signals instead. Did I finish the first asset? Did I publish the first content? Did somebody engage with the idea? Did anyone ask a follow-up question? Did one piece perform better than the others? Did I get clearer about the problem? Did the system become easier to repeat? Those are real wins. And the reason I am stressing this is because a lot of people quit in the invisible phase. They expect passive income to reward them before they have built enough for the reward to make sense. That is like planting seeds and getting angry on day 3 because there is no forest. Relax. Your job in the first 30 days is not to prove you are already free. It is to prove you can build the foundation. That is a completely different objective. Once I accepted that, the challenge got way less emotional. I was no longer waiting for dramatic proof. I was building repeatable evidence, and that changed the entire energy. Somewhere around the middle of the month, maybe day 12 or day 13, I hit the part nobody talks about. The dip, the annoying middle, the part where the initial excitement is gone, the results are not dramatic yet, and your brain starts offering you all kinds of ridiculous suggestions. Maybe I should switch ideas. Maybe I should make the product bigger. Maybe I need a new niche. Maybe I should start over completely. Maybe passive income just works better for other people. That stage is dangerous because it feels logical. It feels like you are being thoughtful. But usually you are just getting uncomfortable because the process is now asking for consistency instead of novelty. And that is where most attempts die. Not at the beginning, in the middle. So here's the truth I learned the hard way. Passive income is built less by genius and more by staying in the room long enough to improve. That is not a sexy sentence, but it is a real one. By that point, I had a simple asset, some related content, a clearer message, and the beginnings of a system. Nothing huge, but enough to prove the direction made sense. Now the question became, how do you actually turn a fragile little experiment into something with real potential? This is where the solution got more concrete for me. Not work harder, not manifest abundance, not 10x your mindset. No, you refine the system in layers. Layer 1, improve the offer. This is step 5. Step 5, make your first asset more useful, not more complicated. That sounds obvious, but people miss it all the time. They add more pages when they should improve clarity. They add more bonuses when they should improve the actual promise. They add noise instead of value. So I looked at the asset I had built and asked simple questions. What part feels vague? What could be more actionable? What might confuse a beginner? What would make somebody say, okay, now I actually know what to do next? That is how you improve. Not by turning your first product into a giant monster, by making it sharper. The best beginner passive income products are often tiny but effective. A clean template, a calculator, a checklist, a roadmap, a mini guide, a pack of scripts, a small tool that removes friction. That is enough if it solves a real problem fast. Layer 2, reduce the distance between attention and action. This is step 6. Step 6, give people an obvious next step. A lot of beginners accidentally create dead-end content. They post something useful, maybe even really useful, but there is nowhere for the viewer to go next. No link, no free resource, no follow-up content path, no simple offer, nothing. So attention comes in and leaks right back out. That is a huge mistake. If somebody likes your content, do not make them guess what to do next. Give them a clear next move. Download the checklist, read the guide, join the email list, watch the next video, grab the template, start with the beginner pack. Simple. You are not pushing people, you are guiding them. That matters because passive income systems need flow. Attention should move somewhere. Trust should deepen somewhere. The relationship should continue somewhere. Otherwise, you are constantly starting from zero. So I started thinking less like a content creator and more like an architect. Where does the viewer arrive? What do they see first? What would help them next? How can I remove friction? How can I make the system easier to enter? That mindset alone is worth a lot, because when you start building passive income, you are not just making products or posts. You are designing movement. From stranger to viewer, from viewer to trust, from trust to action, from action to customer, from customer to repeat buyer or loyal audience member. That path is the real asset, and once you see it, a lot of the mystery disappears. Then came a bigger realization. The first passive income stream does not need to be fully passive to be worth building. That is important. Some people get weirdly purist about this. If it requires any upkeep at all, they act like it does not count. That is nonsense. A better question is, does the thing continue to create value after the initial work is done? If yes, that is leverage. A YouTube video that keeps getting views later. Leverage. A digital product that sells repeatedly after you make it. Leverage. A newsletter sequence that keeps converting later. Leverage. A searchable article that brings in clicks over time. Leverage. You might still maintain it. You might still improve it. Fine. That does not cancel the fact that it is no longer tied one for one to your hours. That is the point. And this helped me stay grounded, because by the third week I could see that the real win was not a giant payout. The real win was building something that could still work tomorrow even if I took my hands off it for a day. That is the beginning of freedom. Tiny freedom, yes, but real. And now we get to the part viewers usually want the most, the actual step-by-step plan. If I had to restart from zero and build passive income again from scratch, this is exactly how I would do it. First, pick one lane where you can solve one narrow problem, not a broad identity, a narrow problem. Second, study what beginners in that lane are already asking. Comments, forums, search results, community posts, FAQs, objections. Find repeated confusion. Third, create a tiny useful asset that solves part of that confusion, not perfect, useful. Fourth, publish content around the exact problem your asset helps solve. Make the content practical, specific, searchable, relatable. Fifth, connect the content to the asset with a very clear next step. Do not hide the bridge. Sixth, pay attention to the response. What questions keep coming up? What wording hits? What angle gets ignored? Where do people get stuck? Seventh, improve the asset based on real feedback. Do not guess forever, use the market. Eighth, repeat the loop. More useful content, better messaging, cleaner offer, stronger path. That is the beginner blueprint. Not glamorous, but solid. And I want to say something else here because this part matters a lot if you are serious. You do not need to wait until you feel like an expert. That excuse destroys a lot of good ideas. You do not need to be the best in the world to help someone who is a few steps behind you. You just need clarity, honesty, and usefulness. If you are one chapter ahead, you can still explain the chapter behind you. That has value. In fact, sometimes recent learners teach beginners better than experts do because they still remember the confusion clearly. So if you have been telling yourself, "Who am I to make something?" let me save you a little time. You are somebody who can make the first version. That is enough. Skill grows after movement, not before it. And by this point in the challenge, that became painfully obvious. The things that improved my system were not brilliance or inspiration. They were repetitions. Writing another piece, reframing the offer, clarifying a headline, cutting fluff, answering one more common question, making the path cleaner. Those tiny improvements stack. That is how boring systems become valuable. By the time I reached the end of the 30 days, I had to be honest with myself. Did I build some magical money machine? No. Did I become financially free in a month? Obviously not. Did I prove that passive income is possible for normal people if they stop romanticizing it and start building it correctly? Yes. Absolutely yes. And that, honestly, was the truth I was looking for. Because this challenge did not teach me that passive income is easy, it taught me something more useful. Passive income is simple, but not easy. There is a difference. Simple means the mechanics are understandable. Find a real problem, build a useful asset, create a path for attention, improve the system, repeat. Easy would mean it feels effortless, quick, and emotionally comfortable. It does not, at least not at first. At first it feels slow, a little awkward, kind of uncertain, and very unglamorous. You will probably question yourself. You will probably wonder if your first idea is too small. You will probably feel silly posting the first version. You will probably think your numbers are unimpressive. Welcome to the real process. That is not failure. That is the price of entry. And weirdly, once I accepted that, the whole thing became less stressful. Because I stopped trying to arrive in 30 days, I focused on installing the machine. That is what viewers really need to understand if they came here looking for the truth. The goal of your first 30 days is not huge passive income. The goal is to build the first version of a system that can eventually produce it. That is a much smarter target. And if you hit that target, you are already ahead of the massive number of people who never move beyond consumption. So let me give you the clean recap. If you want to start building passive income, do this. Pick one narrow problem you can help solve. Validate that people actually care about that problem. Create one small useful digital asset. Make content tied directly to that problem. Give people an obvious next step. Watch the response, improve the system. Stay with it long enough for compounding to begin. That is the path. Could you also invest in boring index funds and build passive income that way? Of course, and you probably should, over time. Could you buy assets with cash once your income grows? Absolutely, but if you are starting from zero or close to zero, your first passive income engine is usually built with skill, effort, and consistency before it is built with money. That was my biggest lesson. Money buys leverage later. But in the beginning, effort usually buys the first leverage, and that is actually good news, because it means the door is not locked unless you are rich. It means a normal person can start, not instantly win. Start. That is enough. And maybe the most surprising part of this whole experiment was realizing that passive income is not really about laziness at all. It is about responsibility. You are taking work that most people scatter randomly, and you are aiming it at assets instead of one-time output. You are choosing to build things that can outlive the day you made them. That is a different way to think, a different way to work, and if you stay with it, a different way to live. So here is the truth in one sentence. Passive income is real, but only after you stop treating it like a shortcut and start treating it like a build. That is what 30 days taught me. Not hype, not fantasy, a build. And if I were you, I would not wait for the perfect idea, the perfect niche, the perfect audience, the perfect timing, or some magical burst of confidence. I would start smaller than my ego wants, simpler than the internet suggests, and sooner than feels comfortable. Because the first asset teaches you more than 100 hours of watching other people talk about assets. And one more thing, because I think this matters. Do not underestimate boring momentum. One useful product, a few solid pieces of content, a cleaner message, a better offer, a growing library, a small audience that trusts you. That may not look dramatic in the beginning, but give that enough time and it starts becoming the thing people later describe as passive income. They see the outcome. They do not see the months of stacking. But now you do. So if this video helped you think more clearly about where passive income actually starts, subscribe, because I want this channel to be the place where we talk about money in a way that is real, practical, and actually usable. And in the comments, tell me this. If you had to build your first passive income stream in the next 30 days, what would you choose? That answer will tell you a lot about where you should start